Welcome to the Theory of DFS podcast. I'm Jordan Cooper, the co-author of The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass you could pick up at theoryofdfs.com. Join with me, Neil Orfield, who has a near 100% probability of being on the podcast. According to your tweets, I was looking at your tweets over the weekend. Is that something that you like to do, like especially on a 4-game split NFL slate, like going based on this first game, the scores? What's the likelihood of a player being in the winning lineup? And
Yeah.
even if you
Yeah.
post
So,
it, does that affect like your late swaps or like and we saw this past weekend. Obviously, you needed Gabe Davis at the end.
yeah. Yeah.
For
Nothing
everything.
mattered. Yep.
Uh,
Yeah. So it should affect my late swaps. For me, it doesn't really as often as it should, just because I'm a 150 maxer and I never really shoot for min cash equity. So unless I have a lineup that I think has a real shot at winning, I'm not doing a ton of late swap for NFL in particular. In NBA, I do a little bit more because I just optimize and I don't set as many rules in NBA, so I don't kind of make lineups structured in a certain way for NBA as much, so it's easier to just optimize to what I want to do in terms of getting to exposures that I like to players. But for NFL, I don't late swap probably as much as I should, just because I'm only really paying attention to the lineups that I think have a chance to actually win something. But yeah, I
in
started
in
doing the
those in
tweet.
those lineups, do you like? Is it the type of thing where it's like, oh, the likelihood of Aaron Jones being in the winning lineup is very high, so I'm going to focus on those lineups and then maybe change a bunch of stuff around for those
Yeah.
lineups.
Yep, I do that, and I do that usually more by hand than I don't use late swap optimizer as much. Then I'll just kind of do it by hand. I mean, some you can also optimize, go into Fantasy Cruncher, take off all of my edits, and just optimize for the actual projections, which I do sometimes. But yeah, so I tweeted out that the first one of those, just kind of for the fun of it, just because I feel like I have a tendency to sometimes overreact to early scores, like, oh, this guy scored a touchdown and I don't have him, and now I'm dead, that kind of thing. And I feel like other people do that too. So I was just like, I'm just going to tweet this out and, see how it goes. And
And those figures
wasn't
are estimates. I mean, you're not like
I'm not using any kind of
right.
it's all just my read. And I only had one person ask me that, like, what is this based on? Because I on one of them I had put, this is not scientific, this is just my read. And then somebody asked me. So then going forward, I put my read at the top of each tweet, so people didn't think that I was like actually running sims or something. But
No. What you should have done is put my read, but still put the figures at very precise, 57.84%.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
I
your
like
that's your read.
yeah.
Because then it'll look like you obviously are like kind of running a mathematical type of thing, but you're really not.
Yeah. Yeah, so I started doing it kind of spur of the moment, and then as I was going, I was like, so I put must-haves as the top one, but then I only put 90%, which isn't really must-have necessarily if you have a 90% plus probability, and then I had nice-to-have, which is 50% plus. I don't know. So I was getting some pushback, I think more based on the terminology that I used rather than the numbers that I was putting on them. But it was so yeah. I tweeted one without really having a plan, just kind of spur of the moment. I decided to tweet it, and immediately gained like 150 followers. Like I think a couple people retweeted it, which for me, I don't have a ton of followers on Twitter, so I was like, okay, if people are enjoying this, I'll keep doing it every half. So I did it every half for the weekend, and I'll try to do it next week. Although next week I will be in Arizona for the Tournament of Champions, so I might be a little bit occupied during the game. So we'll see if I can actually
Well, I
stick
don't
to
know.
it.
I don't know if people enjoyed it. Just that typically, if you're giving out like information like that, you gain followers.
I suppose, but it wasn't even information. It was just my read. I mean, yeah,
Do you think people know the difference? Really?
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
When in the beginning of the football season, most of the time, like the first half, on Mondays and Tuesdays, I tweet out, like looking through results DB. This is the biggest differentials, whatever, and then you get a couple hundred followers or whatever like that, and it's like, don't you realize that most of this account is jokes, right?
So people like useful information. That's good to know. I don't usually do a lot of useful information. My account was started just as a rant tweet account. I did, it's like I can't rant on my regular Twitter account at the time, so I just started my DFS Twitter account as here's where I'm going to rant into the void, and apparently
You
people
could still you
prefer
could
when
still do that. What I
I still
found
do.
what I found on Twitter uh, is that people don't understand that you're a person. They're people misunderstanders because there are a lot of times that like the reason that you're following me is you're either following me or you're people think they're following it for like a specific type of information. So it's like I'm following you for your DFS the strategy stuff, right? And then you post something that has nothing to do with that. They're like I'm gonna unfollow you now. Then define. Then I'm a person,
Go ahead.
right?
Yep.
Like during the presidential election, I'm going ape shit, posting all these predictions and yelling at people, and people are taking
Yep.
bets left and right. It's like, oh, if I wanted politics, I wouldn't have followed your account. Like, I'm a person. Like this is
Yeah.
like that's why I make it a point in my profile. Like, this is who I am as a person, right? And I'm a DFS player. I host this show and whatever. Yes, it's primarily going to be DFS related, but like last night, I'm tweeting out stuff about the Game Changer Wrestling pay-per-view, and of course, those tweets get almost no engage. Like it gets almost
Yeah.
no engagement because
I saw it. I didn't interact because I have no
right, you
idea.
have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, right? But I know not to go like overboard with
Yeah.
that. Right? Like I don't use my Twitter to like oh I like here's the sandwich that I'm eating and here's the shit that I'm doing. It's like if there's something interesting to say, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna post a picture or something like that. And the one and the ones that know, and the ones that don't could just overlook it or whatever. Because some wrestling people were still like tweeting like, oh, what do you think about whatever? That's fine. But it's like you get the DMs or something, or you get responses. Stick to what you know or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like what?
Shut up and dribble, Jordan.
Right. Shut up and dribble. Right. They're the people misunderstanders.
Yeah.
Like we're people, and then sometimes you follow people just because they are people, right? Like you follow Draft Cheat because of like you're not getting any information. The whole point
He's
is
just
that
a troll. I mean,
right. You're just right. Exactly.
And you're there to watch the trolling. Yeah.
Right. Or like there's so many people that tweet out during the games, and like I don't have any compelling notion to do that unless I have like some type of like witty quip or something. Like, oh my god, I can't believe that play.
Yeah.
To me that's more annoying because a lot of times those tweets, if you're not watching the thing that they're watching, you have no fucking clue what's going on.
Yeah, that's true. If you don't provide any context, you just like, people who follow my account, I can probably assume that most of them are watching the football game, but not necessarily all of them. Yeah, I usually provide a little bit of context, but
Yeah, but you don't have to. I mean, it's your
get
Twitter
frustrated
account. You can
some
do
of
whatever the
time.
fuck you want.
Yeah, and then I follow like soccer people. I probably follow, because of you, I probably follow some soccer DFS people who will tweet something that I have no idea what they're talking about, and it's because they don't provide that context. Yeah, I see what you mean. That's it's a little bit frustrating because then like I want to know, like I want to dig in, but like they don't provide even enough context for me to figure out what they're talking about, what sport they're talking about. Are they talking about sports? Is this a bachelor thing? That's can
Right. What a goal. Like, that's the whole tweet. What a goal.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I at least have some idea. It's at least sports related. I
Right.
can narrow it down to what soccer, hockey.
If it's in the morning, it's probably soccer. If it's at night, it's probably hockey. Right. Add a hashtag. At the game hashtag, you could add to it.
Yeah.
Right. There's stuff to do. But I mean, but I'm also not the type of person that, like, if I see that in my Twitter timeline, I'm like, I'm gonna reply to this guy and say, where was the context? You're a very poor Twitter follow. It's like, dude, there's the mute button. There's a follow. I mean, like, you put them on lists. Like, that's what I do for like the very sports specific people. I just put them on. I just put them on sports specific lists. So it's like, if I'm not watching football or playing like NBA DFS, it's like all of that stuff is in my basketball list, and
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah,
I'm not
I haven't
following
been
it.
using the lists, and I think that I should. I think that's actually really useful on Twitter. Probably more so for somebody actually after one of our podcasts. Somebody sent me. So I had referenced that somebody JM to win maybe had referenced that he has a Twitter list of NFL beat reporters to follow, and somebody who watched our, so I referenced that on this podcast, and somebody who watched this podcast then sent me the list that he thought he was talking about. So that was really helpful for me. So I think going forward, I should probably figure out how to use lists a little bit better, especially for XFL when XFL comes back, because you don't really get good information from XFL unless you're following very specific people. So I think that's actually a huge edge in kind of those more minor sports.
I don't know if I've encountered people, because we get it in Roto Grinders Discord, people that don't even use Twitter. Like, to me, I think from an information perspective, I think Twitter is like the best resource for any DFS player.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Me too.
So like it always amazes me where it's like, where could I find out this information? It's like just Twitter search, or like and it's not like you even have to like follow, like, oh, like I don't follow all the beat writers for the NFL. I just follow the accounts that aggregate that information, but I don't necessarily even need to follow them. I don't even need to put them on a list. It's like you could type in a player's name into Twitter search, and you'll find something. Like if you know what is Zach Levine's status? Is there any news? Like, number one, we have like services like Roto Grinders and ETR and Underdog, and like they post notifications and all stuff like that.
I turn on notifications for some of those accounts just to get the information quickly.
Right. So you don't even have to look for it. But let's say you wanted to. Let's say it's like, this guy's questionable NBA. There was shoot around.
Sometimes you just type in find the information before the aggregator puts it out there, because you can find it from the beat reporter sometimes quicker than they put it out there. So yeah. It's pretty easy to find information just by searching on Twitter.
Right, just searching for the player's name, or just and so you don't even have to follow that. And also another tip, to media consumption wise, I think that a lot of people, like, I think they're using Twitter. There's a way to use Twitter in a plus EV manner. I think that there are certain people that, first off, like, follow everything. To me, I think that's minus EV. That's like, let's say you were to actually follow, use the follow button, and follow all the beat writers for all the sports. Let's say you play all the sports. So you're following the MMA guys. You're following the local reporter for the Jets. You're following all of that, and now you're following 3,000 people, and you're just using your main feed. I can't see how that's how you could use that. Yeah. It just becomes a fire hose of a lot of stuff that most of the time you're not getting the information that you need, or you're getting a ton of promotional stuff, and it's like everything is intermixed into that. Yeah. That it would be much better to have lists or have aggregators of that. Like that, like, to me, Justin for Underdog, like, is the king of NBA news. Like, if there's anything about anything, like, there will be an Underdog alert. I feel no compelling need to follow any NBA beat writer. Like, just any, like, I have some in my NBA list, but I will not, there's no reason for me to, like, have them in my main timeline, which for me, like, the way that I have it set up, I have 3 screens in front of me on my computer, and I have TweetDeck. So I have, like, my main timeline, then I have a news timeline, which is like news and politics and stuff, and then I have all the sports. So it's like, and whatever sport I'm playing is the closest to the main timeline. So if I'm not playing soccer, like, my soccer's all the way at the other end of the screen. It's like, I'm not going to need that till Saturday, pretty much. I mean, I can see what's going on there, but whatever. But the main timeline that I have is the timeline that I would use on my phone. So it's like anything that, so like, I'll have the news account, like the Underdog account. I will have I'll have like Shams and Waj, like the really like Schefter, like those types of guys I will follow. But the local beat reporters will be in the lists, so that it's like, if I'm on my phone, that means I'm not like actively like building lineups and doing CSV stuff. So it's the type of stuff where I'm in the bathroom, or I'm out shopping, or on the couch at 9:00 at night, or something like that, where it's like, my main timeline is the main people, and if Schefter tweets something about the NFL game that night, like, it's there. Like I'll probably get a notification if it's that important, but it's kind of like I'm not going to follow you. You're not going to be in that unless I want. That's going to be my phone consumption, and then I also take out anyone that retweets stuff too much. I turn off their retweets. Like some
you can do that. Turn off retweets.
You could do that in Twitter. You could go to their profile and just turn off retweets. So there's a bunch of people that like retweet that type of news. So it's like I'll get the alert, and then there's people that are in like the fantasy space. Typically, they're fantasy analysts that retweet the beat reporters, and it's like I don't need to see this in my main timeline like 14 times when I've already gotten the news from Waj already. I don't need to see his retweet 7 times already.
So it sounds like you're using your Twitter in a much more plus EV manner than I am. I mean, I don't do any of that. I haven't been using lists. When you say TweetDeck, I don't actually know what that means exactly.
TweetDeck is the PC Mac app for Twitter that you have columns.
Okay.
So anything could be a column. So like you could have you have a column for your mentions, column for your notifications. You could have a column for your timeline, column for any list. You could have a column for any search. You could have a column for anything. So if you're looking for like inactives, if you want on a Sunday or something like that to just type in the word inactives and have that as a column and it'll populate as the tweets come in, you could do that. And then obviously there's also settings for each column. You can make it so that like only tweets that were like liked more than 50 times. Like you could have like only from certain accounts, certain keywords, I mean, most of the time I just have lists. It's just like basically my main timeline of my lists. But it's so you can see it all on one screen. I don't have to flip between. It's all taking up one 27-inch monitor. And I could you could set up as many lists as possible, any columns as possible, and you could scroll back and forth if you want. But like it's a way so you could take in Twitter like all in one big chunk, without having to refresh or pull down or anything. It's just running that type of thing.
I should do that. So all I do is I have I have Twitter notifications turned on for accounts that are relevant at a given time. So like coming up on the NBA trade deadline, I turn on Woj and Shams and Mark Stein, all the ones who might be tweeting out trade deadline related stuff. And then I turn off those notifications when it's not NBA trade deadline season. And then during football season, I turn on, Underdog NFL, that kind of stuff. So the only way I'm differentiating between different accounts that I follow is just turning on notifications for the ones that are relevant for me. But it sounds like that would be a lot more useful to actually have different tweet decks and different ways of consuming information.
Well, because I mean, I like seeing the context behind everything. I like seeing what other sites are tweeting. Other analysts are, that here's the game that we're going for. Like whatever. Whatever all the sites are doing, the articles that are coming out, Levitan's this thing came out. Let me take a look. It updates there, like if I want to. But you're using Twitter the same way that I use like RotoGrinders notifications. Like that information is coming to me. I don't need to turn on Twitter alerts, so it comes because I already have. Like what's going to happen is that it's going to show up on Twitter, and 2 minutes later, I'm going to get a RotoGrinders alert for that exact news.
I get that.
Right, so like to do that doubly, I can understand doing one or the other, but not both, because then both would be like, why do you have to get 2 notifications? And the thing about turning on Twitter notifications for accounts is that there's no granular control on that. So like a RotoGrinders alert will always be news. There's not like if I just do Underdog NBA. I mean, every once in a while they're tweeting out starting lineups that I may not need. Like I only care if the starting lineup is somehow like
different than you expected.
Right. So like I don't want to hear the I don't. Anytime I hear a notification on my phone, it sends that like rabbit ears up of like I should be looking at this, and I don't want to have 25 notifications on a night of NBA when it's just the starting lineup for the Knicks is as expected. Yeah. It's like no, I want to hear the sound if it's not as expected. Which if it wasn't as expected, I'd get a RotoGrinders result. I'd get the notification for. So like
I never have my sound on, so it's all just visual for me. So maybe that's
so. Can you miss it? Can't you miss one or something?
Theoretically, but my phone lights up, and I always see things when it's that close to lock anyway.
Right.
When it's close to NBA lock, I've just got my phone kind of at my hand, so I don't really miss stuff.
Turn on sound. That makes it easier. Just a ding
I could,
ding.
but
But you're still you're
I don't do it
you're
more.
using Twitter in the same. I mean, we're both using Twitter in for similar purposes.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm a little bit more I'm a little bit more granular and maybe a little bit more kind of a stickler.
Sophisticated. You're sophisticated in how you use Twitter.
Well, how long have you been on Twitter?
Uh, I don't know. So I think my original account, I've probably been on for 10 years, but I have used it very sparingly and
Oh,
never really took off. And then I started my DFS account specifically because I was like, I just need to rant essentially, and not even rant, just I need to whine into the void was kind of the idea coming into it. And I didn't really expect to have a ton of followers, and I also partially because I thought this is where I will get more information. I'll follow people who just tweet about DFS. Initially was the thought. I'm not going to follow anybody political. I'm just going to follow DFS people and just get information that I need.
so your account.
Kind of
If I go to your follow list, it's just going to be
well, that was
DFS
the
people.
idea. That was the idea.
Okay.
That is mostly true, actually. It's mostly DFS people. It's some NFT people as well. Ways that I try to make money, I guess, is essentially
Right.
what it comes down to. Yeah, I don't think there's many exceptions to that in my follow list.
Oh, yeah, I have a much wider mix. I don't follow celebrities though. I never get that, and I don't care. Like,
Yeah,
I don't care what Kanye West is doing. I like what does that matter?
Yeah, I think sometimes that matters for NFT stuff. So I might follow some celebrities who are into NFT stuff, but in general, yeah, I agree with you. I don't get a lot out of following celebrities on Twitter.
Right. So most of the accounts that I follow are typically fantasy sports, wrestling, technology, politics, business,
Yep.
like following like market people, like the top end, like like Joe Weisenthal of like Odd Lots or something,
Yeah.
because he just it's a way, because even though I do have like a business tab, business finance whatever list, it's like that's kind of like a fire hose, more or less. I mean, it's not like absurd like that, but it's like people are commenting on stuff and the stocks are down, everything's going to shit, whatever,
Yeah.
like that type of stuff. But it's like, well, my main timeline are just like maybe two or three people that are essentially saying that they put out their own content and media, where it's like, okay, if I'm on my phone, I kind of know what's going on. Like just like in politics, it's like, okay, I know what's going on. I'm following three or four people that I can see considered worthwhile follows. So it's like it's sprinkled in between everyone yelling about a football game or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, mine, I should say, I have not really been very careful about who I add. Sometimes I just add people because I want to follow the drama that's going on, that kind of thing. So
Do you unfollow?
if you go to
do you go in and you unfollow people?
rarely, I don't.
Do you
very
do you, okay? Do you okay? Here, let's get into controversial stuff.
Okay.
Do you? I mean, for Twitter use.
Yeah.
Do you unfollow or do you mute? Do you ever mute people?
I have muted maybe a couple people lifetime, and it's because they're people that I already didn't follow, and they still showed up in my timeline all the time. People like maybe Go Sixers Go might be someone that if I haven't muted him, I would at least think about muting him. Just people that I'm like, this, it just makes me mad every time I read something you tweet.
So basically, you're using the mute button to get rid of people in your timeline that you don't follow.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not that. But you know that you could follow someone and mute them, so you're still following them. It's just that you never see anything from them. I never understand. I don't understand the purpose of that.
Yeah, I would just unfollow you if I'm so annoyed by you that I never want to see what you're tweeting. I'm just gonna unfollow you.
No, actually, I have to take that back, Neil.
Okay.
Recently, I have muted people that I followed.
Okay.
And it's temporary. It's the DFS people that I follow for DFS. It's very similar to me complaining about like, oh, why are you tweeting about the thing that I like? Like it's basically the DFS people that 95%+ of their tweets now are NFT related,
Yeah.
and I don't I don't care.
I've
Right?
had to be careful to not. I'm trying to keep my account a DFS account. Occasionally, there are times that I want to get into it, and I'm just not going to. I'm trying to keep it mostly NFT or mostly DFS related, and then I just change my profile picture to an NFT here and there. But
Right. Like I don't care
trying to
about
keep
what's
it
going on with
DFS.
looks. I don't care about your looks. I don't know what that
Yeah.
means, but I don't care about your looks.
It was just free money for a while, and now it's less free money. That's what I've
Oh,
been.
okay. So I missed out on the looks.
You missed out on some
I
free money.
missed out on
Yep.
the looks. Uh, and then block. And as far as blocking people, like I used to be someone that did barely ever block people. Now I block people very very uh, easily. And to me, my rule when it comes to blocking is I don't. Here's my two things that I do. I don't know if it has anything to do with daily fantasy sports, but this is how to use Twitter and media better for your DFS play. We'll kind of try to make that the topic today, I guess. Uh, if you're replying to me too much, anyone that wants to
Okay.
argue bullshit,
Yep.
an insult, and everything like that, I have no problem if you do that like as a subtweet or something. Just fucking my notification. I have Twitter notifications on. So
Yeah.
when I get mentioned, I get a doot, whatever, and I don't want, because I like reply, I like replying to people quickly. Someone has a
Yeah.
question, someone has something to say. If I'm available,
Yeah.
like yeah, sure. I mean, I like having conversations.
Me too. I'm the same way.
Right. So I want so a lot of people say, well, why don't you just turn them off, turn the notifications off? Well, then it ruins
And
the
you miss
purpose
stuff.
of why I'm using Twitter. So it's
Yeah.
like if you're gonna fucking that's bullshit and you're fuck you and blah, like you're blocked, like just like because that's the only way I could get you to stop fucking notifications and stuff.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what usefulness do you have to me that you're gonna do stuff like that? Also, another thing, anytime, very similarly, uh, I will sometimes look at their timeline, and if their timeline does not align with anything that I would like to talk about, I just block them prematurely.
I have people that tweet at me a lot that I looked at their timeline and I found that to be the case, that we were probably not aligned on a lot of issues.
Right.
But I keep it cordial and try to be friendly. I can be friendly with people that I disagree with on some core things is kind of the way that I'm trying to go with things. But I could see it going sour if I tweet the wrong thing. If I tweet out my feelings about certain topics, I could see people who are very buddy with me deciding that they're not suddenly if I
Right.
tweet
Well,
certain
and then
things.
sometimes, and that's typically when I go through the blocking spree because it's like
Yeah,
it's almost like bait. It's like,
yeah,
oh, something happened in the news, and I'm going to say something that some people would take as being on the wrong side of the political spectrum, even though
yep,
there's really just a right answer, and you're an asshole. And
right.
if you're not
Oftentimes,
right,
yeah,
and then people start coming out of the woodwork, and then you go, never seen this person before, and you look in their timeline, and you could tell by the people that they retweet that what's the purpose of having any conversation with this person? So I just
yeah.
like bye
So
bye.
I take the different approach of I just kind of ignore people. I just don't interact a lot of the time.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
the
care.
notifications go off.
Yeah, if I guess so. I've never blocked anybody. I think on either of my Twitter accounts, it's never gotten to that point for me. I also only have 3,000 followers now after my big spree yesterday of adding a lot of
Right.
new followers. So I'm pretty small potatoes. I don't have a lot of haters, people that are coming after me or anything. So maybe that's the difference. Maybe I'm just not at your level where I need to be. Kind of
Right.
people are wanting to engage me, and you also have more of that personality where you're a little bit combative intentionally. So
Right.
that probably baits people in a little bit more than I'm pretty low key. So I don't think I attract it quite as much as you do. But yeah, I don't think I would probably get to that point if people keep tweeting at me, keep wanting to have this conversation. I definitely can see the usefulness to the block tool.
Right. Right. Because Twitter is for me. It's not for you. It's
Right.
for me. I mean, like, you're a snowflake. I don't care
Right.
what you think of me. Who gives a
Yeah.
shit?
Sure. I'm a
Right? I
snowflake. That's
don't
fine.
care. What I don't see the like, obviously, other than to promote my shit. Obviously, when I go on a show and everything, I post stuff like that. But like, I use Twitter in the way that I want to use
Yeah.
Twitter. There'll be occasions during a Monday night football game or something where I'm tweeting 10, 12 times. Yeah. And then I could go 3 days without a tweet. And it doesn't mean I'm not on Twitter, just that I have nothing to say. Like I've nothing. I nothing feel like I'm providing any value. There's nothing, no joke or quip or anything. There's nothing. It's like, okay, here's this podcast I'm on. I'll see you tomorrow. I mean, I'm still looking, and a lot of times I'm replying, but a lot of times I'm replying back to other people, just not tweeting myself. Because I also don't do the quote tweet. Like, I'm an old school Twitter person, so I come in 2009. I was on Twitter, but I was on Twitter using Twitter because I was in the technology space. So any new app that came out, I was on the use, and this is what I'm having for dinner.
So you're a big TikTok guy now. That's what you're saying.
No, I've tried TikTok. It seems like a waste of time. Right.
Yeah. It's entertainment only.
Right. Well, that's the point that I'm making.
Like, I have the app right now. Yeah.
Right. Understand that my natural inclination is podcasts.
Yeah.
So instead of TikTok, I just listen to 7 million podcasts. So back in the day, like as far as like credit is concerned, it used to be that the retweet wasn't even a button. Like you couldn't retweet and have it show as the other person's tweet. All you do is before the tweet put the letters RT and the person's name, and then there you go. So I don't like personally. You can do whatever you want. Like anyone on Twitter could do whatever the fuck they want. It's their own Twitter account. I'm not the type of person that does the quote tweet with the arrow or the eyeballs. Oh, it's like look at this. Look at like, dude, you had nothing to add. Why didn't you just retweet the fucking thing? Just go here, retweet,
well, because then they have Blender not seeing it because you have them muted on their retweets.
Only people that do it too much, right? But to me, it's a credit thing. It's like you could just retweet if you just it's interesting. Right. Well, but they could use it that way if they want. I'm just saying, personally, I don't like going through and going, I agree with this. Finger point down. Finger point like.
So here's what they're doing. They're getting engagement, right? So if they do the eyeball thing, that counts as their own tweet. So then it counts as everybody who likes their eyeball.
Yeah, that's the reason they do it. That's the point why I don't.
Get hundreds of thousands of likes and stuff. So they're getting engagement for doing their little eyeball thing. And
right, or probably nothing. Probably nothing. Everything is probably nothing. Thanks for the little bit of news that doesn't matter. Probably nothing. Some C-list celebrity has an NFT. Probably nothing. Probably nothing. I can do that all day. Why don't? Maybe I'll get more followers doing that.
I mean, if you just get an NFT, put it as your profile picture, a lot of people will follow you. Has been my experience.
Is that the hack? Should I just tweet about NFTs? Yeah. Even what will people think if
Probably not anymore. It's dead now. Nobody
it's wants now. Now it's dead.
We don't want to read about your dead NFT. Yeah.
No. I need to pump my bags, right?
Yeah.
I don't got any bag. Can I pretend to have bags?
Sure. Yeah. Right click save my profile picture. You can pretend it's yours.
Okay. I mean, I can pretend that for anyone. What's the most expensive ape? Can I put that as my profile picture?
I would have no issue with it. You could, in theory, do the apparently the profile thing where they do like a hexagon if it's a verified NFT. If it's in your actual NFT wallet, you can actually right click and then mint as a new NFT the image that you right click save. So people have been doing that as a joke. I'm not technologically savvy enough to do that, but you can theoretically. Yes.
But you think most of the people that don't know shit anyway, you could do. I could just change my whole profile to like the most expensive CryptoPunk and put that blenderhd.eth. Right, I got to do that. Right, and then I got to post some. That my profile is like something to the moon and minting something. They do some verbiage Absolutely. Or something. I mean, you're telling me I get 10,000, 100,000 followers.
I mean, I think that it's typically related to like Bored Apes. There's only 10,000 total. So like,
what if I say I own all the Bored Apes? I'm buying all the Bored Apes. I'm making them not bored anymore.
Yeah, I don't think people will believe you if you say that. You got to be a little bit more credible than that.
Oh, a little bit more credible. It's not one of those things where the bigger the lie is, it almost feels like it has to be true.
I don't think so in the NFT space. I think you gotta keep it a relatively believable lie to get the followers. So if you just say I bought this gold Bored Ape, people might believe that. Just make it your profile picture. You do have to tweet about it at least once, I think, to like so people see it that you got a new Bored Ape. Get
Oh,
somebody to
do I have to
retweet you.
post like an OpenSea transaction or something like that? But can't they look at that? Well, yeah, of course they could look at it, but 98% of people don't look. Right, that's
But
the
here's
whole
the thing:
point.
you're going to post it, and then the actual owner of this Bored Ape that you just right-click saved is going to come at you and say, "What? This guy is pretending to be me. This is not his. This is my Bored Ape." And you're just going to get more engagement based on the controversy. So it's all,
Right,
it's negative. Negative press is all press is good press. I think that's
right. I could
used
just
to be
call
one of those
myself
situations.
Beanie, right?
Yeah, right.
Isn't that some dude that's scamming everyone or something like that?
Yeah, and it's been known for like a year, I think, that he was a bad dude, and somehow it's still a shock to people every time somebody posts something new about him.
Is he the Tommy G of the NFT space?
I think so, essentially. Yeah.
But this is Twitter. This is Twitter. I mean, but Twitter has its own culture.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like people. I sometimes have people send me memes that I saw a month ago because it's
Right.
usually on Twitter first.
My wife does that also. She'll show me her phone. Did you see this? I said, yeah, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
where did you find it? It's like, oh, I saw it on Facebook. It's like, if you
Yeah.
saw it on Facebook, it's been on Twitter like for 2 months already.
I
Right?
gotta say, my Facebook usage is down at an all-time low right now. I think I probably check Facebook a couple times a week, maybe at most, and it's usually just like a real quick because I get a notification. I get a little notification, I go check, and then now it's mostly like, oh, this is what somebody you don't know said on a page you follow for some reason, and I don't care about that. So
You don't curtail the stuff that you like on Facebook. It's like the only people that I'm friends with on Facebook are people that like if I looked at the list, it's like someone that I would literally like physically go to lunch with.
okay, yeah, no,
Right. So like it's like which means there's very few people that I'm
yeah,
friends with.
no, I've got high school people that I haven't seen since high school and wasn't really friends with in high school. Yeah,
Right.
I've got
What's the
I
point?
don't curate that much. It's still interesting sometimes. I don't know. I kind of enjoy seeing what people are up to occasionally, but like I said, I also just don't really use Facebook that much. So
Do
maybe
you think you could use Facebook for DFS news? That would be ridiculous.
no. I mean maybe you could, but I am definitely not set up for it. I don't understand Facebook well enough to do it.
Uh, the TikTok would not be a place to get DFS news either.
Yeah, I don't think I would try that.
Right. Instagram. It's weird to say. I think Instagram may be the second place to get news if you could read into stuff.
If you read into like the eyes from a basketball player that tell you that somebody's getting traded, trades going down.
Or whatever. So but I mean, literally, sometimes Instagram accounts will have like we don't know if they were at shoot around, and it's like they have a hotel picture at 2:41 p.m. and it's like I don't think this guy's playing tonight. Or I mean, like you could find out like but you'd have to read into stuff. MMA fighters, if you follow I don't, but I mean I see people that post in MMA channels will say, on Thursday or something, it's like, this was just posted on their Instagram. I'm not sure if this dude's making weight. Right? Like that type is like okay, at least there's something, there's a photo, there's something that you could garner. I'm not saying that you should be like, oh, and I got to follow all the basketball players on Instagram or something.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but all I can say is that if James Harden is tweeting out has an Instagram photo at 1:15 in the morning, in a dark place, it's probably
At
at
a
a strip
buffet.
club, right?
Yeah.
A buffet or a strip club, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean a strip club buffet. We're saying the same thing.
Right. So, is there any other ways that you could use Twitter or like just as far as getting news? Only because it annoys me. Everything annoys me, obviously. I'm very easily annoyed that in 2022 there should be no reason a DFS player should not know the news of any sport that they play. Some are harder than others.
Yep.
Because there's like in soccer, for instance, the Premier League, it's the most covered league. Like you're not going to miss anything. Everything's done. But if you're playing World Cup qualifiers for South America or Central, and what's the Ecuador lineup, and the game isn't even on television, and there's no it's Ecuador versus New Guinea or some really crap game. Like, you'll have to go on Twitter and just type in Ecuador XI, or it's like, and try to find, and a lot of times you find conflicting starting 11s, or you find, there's 3 Rodriguez's on the roster, and it lists like without an initial, and you're like, which one is it? Like, I could get that, but at least you could find that information. It still annoys me so much when people ask about like news related things where like anything you ask, I could find in 30 seconds, and then I'm sitting there going, why can't you just do what I just did? Because it's not like my first reaction to them is like, do you think that NBA reporting goes through me? Do you think it comes through our Discord? Like, we're just posting from just look at the place that we're looking at, right? And you still constantly get over and over again people that are like, is this guy in tonight? It's like, did you get a notification for it?
It's the same thing on the Osmo YouTube channel. It's just people, is so-and-so playing tonight? It's like, yeah, he was ruled out an hour ago. Or sometimes we just don't know. I mean, sometimes it is players that we don't know yet. And maybe they're just hoping to get like the read of the analyst. What do you think? Is he going to play tonight? But
then address it that way. At least that gives a connotation of like, I know the information, but do you have any? And even my response would probably be, what the fuck do I know? Do I have the coaches on my cell phone? No, I don't. Right.
Yeah.
But to me, like that's the least you could do.
Yeah.
That's why it annoys me, because like I'm like my response sometimes is, you're competing in the same contest as people with applied mathematics degrees and computer programming whatevers, and like the smartest people in the world, and you can't figure out who's on an injury report for an NBA team. Like, maybe you shouldn't be like, if you can't even do that, if you can't even Google something and find something in 10 seconds, like, are you ever going to beat this game? Like,
yeah, that's the truth.
Like, what's so hard about just type this into Twitter search, type this into, right? Is this guy active for like we have the showdown slates?
Yep.
Is blah 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 active?
It's like this is a conversation we had a few weeks ago about needing to be able to put in the minimum amount of effort, or put in a lot of effort to be good enough. Like, you're just not going to make it if you're not willing to put in the effort yourself to try to be self-sufficient.
Right. And if you're not going to be self-sufficient, like all these sites, we have notifications and stuff. Like, I mean, like,
oh yeah,
if you don't want to look for stuff and just go, whatever important stuff is just going to come to me, I never have to ask for it because it'll just come to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I do. I don't mean self-sufficient in going to find the beat reporters yourself. I mean self-sufficient in figuring out which tools you can use to find the information you need, rather than bothering somebody else who's just using the same tools.
Right. Because if it was 2013, I can understand.
Yeah.
Right? Because then the news, sometimes that was the edge, because it was so hard to find the news, and there weren't aggregators or services that even showed that. But it's like, NBA, just go to Twitter, go to _NBA, put on notifications, and you're done. You don't need to look for anything NBA related ever again. Right?
Yep.
But I mean, you can do the same with Roto Grinders. I mean, it may be 2 minutes later because Justin is the quickest of anyone. Yeah. But it's like, anything that would be important to DFS will come to you. If it didn't come to you, either one, no one knows, or two, it's really not important. Is the guy that the 11th guy is the 7th guy off the bench? Is he in? Projected for 8 minutes? Like, there's going to be no news notification for that. Like, who cares? It doesn't make any difference.
I mean, if he's cutting into somebody else's minutes, 8 minutes could make a difference. But I get what you're saying in general. It's they have a pretty good idea of what's important news, what's actually going to affect DFS players when they do that. And now Underdog NFL works too. I mean, they just started, and they essentially just do real news that matters to us. That's a relatively new Twitter handle. I had been following NBC Sports Edge, was the closest thing I could find to a good aggregator, and then they had too many things that were not news. It was just like, here's this person's breakdown, and it was 5 times an hour of that. So I kind of got tired of that. So it's good to have Underdog NFL as well.
Right, or any of the. I mean, it obviously used to be Fantasy Labs before Justin left.
Yep.
But like even the Roto Grinders alerts are free. You could download the Roto Grinders app. and you can get alerts for every sport or whatever. I mean, like if you don't want to use Twitter, if you're like, I don't want to have Twitter on my phone, I don't want to look at anything like that. It's like, well, anything that you see there, we're gonna send an alert out about. You'll and anything that's worth knowing. Golf, like withdrawals in golf, it's like, oh, I got to get up and whatever. Yeah, you got to get up to see if there's any withdrawals or whatever. But it's like, there's no point. Is Louis Oosthuizen with like if he withdraws, it's going to be in the middle of the round like he always does, right? Anyway, if you play golf, like Jason.
So you know
Day,
golf better than I do. Yeah.
right? Well, because I played it for a while, for like 2 years. Like Jason Day and Louis Oosthuizen.
Played as in a player or a DFS player?
Oh, DFS player. I can't play golf. Okay. I can't play anything. I can play pitch and putt maybe, right?
All right.
But it's like all the news will come to you. So like if you're not utilizing that, I mean, I don't know if anyone's listening to this that doesn't.
Right.
But I think that media diet. Now, what would you consider that we're talking about news now? That your media diet when it comes to just like sports and DFS in general. Like me, that I'm much more likely to listen to a wide variety of DFS content related to slates and look at a lot of different sites. Like I'll look at Awesemo. I'll read articles from other places and stuff. Not that if I agree or disagree with it, just to know what other people are looking at.
I know what they're saying. Sometimes you get good information. Some people say all the time, oh, I listen to podcasts so that I can fade them. I get that all the time. People saying, a lot of sharp players say, I listen to what other people are saying so that I can fade, to know what the field's going to do so I can fade it. And that's not my approach. I approach it as I'm trying to get good information. But sometimes I do hear people saying something that I interpret differently than they do. And it's information that I am getting through them, but I interpret it differently than they do. So I'm sort of fading what they're saying, even though I'm getting the information through them. I do that, but I don't consume content ever for the purpose of I'm going to fade what this person says, or I'm going to learn what the field's going to do wrong by listening to what this person says. That's just something that it's kind of a side product sometimes for me. But yeah, I listen to all sorts of content. Most of the content I consume these days is Awesemo, but sure, I listen to other podcasts and stuff as well to try to figure out what other people are saying and other good information that's out there.
But I'm not listening to the reason I listen is more similar to what, like, listening to see who to fade, but it's not because it's like, oh, the analyst sucks and that's why I'm right. No, it's more the fact of like the mathematics say that X player is going to be 36% owned, right? Around there. And I go to another site and it's like 34, 36, 38, like somewhere in that range. Yet if you read all the, like, they're listed as the top value play. They're like you got some podcasts that 5,000 people listen to. You got to slam this guy. And it's like, dude's not going to be 36% owned. He's going to be 54% owned.
Right.
And that's going to matter now. And that difference, that delta is going to matter to the way that I build lineups. And then sometimes you see a player that's 26% owned in the ownership projections around the industry in aggregate, and it's like they're like the seventh best value or something, like where they're good. It's an 8-game slate or whatever, and it's like no one they're never mentioned. Like you don't. It's like they're sitting there in the projections there. They're sitting at 26% ownership, projected ownership, and like I don't. How come no one's talking about them and ends up coming in at 14% owned? Right? Because no one, there was no, people weren't just listening to stuff and watching shows and whatever. It's like, no, if you just trusted the project, you look at all the sharp players and they're over the field in that guy. It's just that they weren't mentioned on anything because there was nothing to highlight. There was no new situation with the team. It's just like, okay, he's there, he's decent, he projects decently.
Yeah.
Nothing to write. And a whole bunch of other news happened. So everyone's concerned about this team, and that guy's just sitting there in a weak, scarce position at 6,800 that manages to fit into a bunch of lineups. It's like, so it's not a matter of like, oh, play the guys that no one's mentioning and fade the guys that everyone's mentioning. It's just that I know how human psychology works.
Yeah.
That especially the non-projection people, good 25-30% of the field, maybe they're not looking at projections, they're just reading and listening to content, And I'm like,
Yep.
if you didn't look at any of the projections or anything, and you just listened to these 5 shows, it would say, oh, you got to play this guy, and it's
Yep.
yeah, he's gonna be 60% owned when he should be 40.
Right.
Doesn't make him a bad play. It just means that the lineups that I have him in have are too high owned, and I need to make up for that elsewhere. So, like, to me, that's the reason why you consume the media, and and also depends on the sport, and it depends on the slate. I don't feel compelled to have to listen and to the 5 NBA podcasts on a Monday. Like,
Right.
I just I on a 4-game slate or something like that.
Especially because the news is going to change everything anyway.
Right.
But, yeah, even without that, it's just it's not necessary.
Right. Or that a night before MLB type of podcast. It's like I don't know what I'm going to get out of that because nothing's really been set or anything. Like I leave it on as talk radio type of stuff where I just going through, and then obviously I go to different sites and see their projections and their ownership and everything and their top stacks tools and all that type of stuff because other people look at it. But like as far as like I know it's weird. We both work for content sites, and I think I would say it a little bit more bluntly than you maybe, but I think you would agree with me that if Osimo and Rotogrinders produce no written articles and no podcast / YouTube shows / whatever, it would not necessarily affect any way that you play.
I would disagree to the extent that I do listen to. I listen to shows, so I think it sort of affects me some, particularly for NBA, more so than any other sport. I would say for NBA, hearing how the shows break down injury news as it comes up, that kind of stuff, or like projects how if this player is out, here's how I'm going to change things.
Mm-hmm. But that would be, just to make it clear, that's the type of thing that would end up happening in the projections.
For the most part, yes.
Right.
There are occasionally something like, so here's an example. Maybe a month ago, Spencer Dinwiddie. Adam Scher was on a show talking about Spencer Dinwiddie saying, I think that there's a real chance that he gets 34, 35 minutes, and we have him projected for 29 and a half because he was coming back from injury, and it projected him for 29 and a half. I went in and manually boosted him because Adam's also a fan of the Wizards. But I think, in general, they're looking at the popcorn machine and doing all of that, looking at the data more than I do. They're looking at the NBA data and kind of giving range of outcomes sometimes more than I do. So I do think that I do use the information that I get in shows sometimes. I don't read anything on any of the sites. I read the tools. I don't read any articles generally.
Right.
I read what the tools say. So I don't think I entirely agree with you because I do, and for golf. So I listen to the golf shows. I know nothing about golf. Sometimes they say things that are kind of drastically different than the boom bust tool, and so I sort of factor in what Ben Ross, Eric Lindquist, Jason Ross, what those guys are saying. I kind of weigh it against the boom bust tool in determining what I'm going to do. So I think I do let them sway me with the information that they're giving. So a couple weeks ago, I think Ben Rossa said something along the lines of Seamus Power and Maverick McNeely, either one of them could be $11,000 at some point this year, and it wouldn't be a shock. And that kind of, in my mind, is like, okay, this is a player who might be a lot better than we're giving credit to right now. Not getting a ton of ownership. He's kind of a high variance player, and I boosted those players because of that. Because it was like, well, they might not be as good as the number they're at right now, but they also might be a lot better. So internally, I kind of take note of the things that they say, and I do use it in my evaluation process.
Okay, unlike me, that I'm more likely to, I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah.
As long as the numbers are accurate, I really doesn't.
Yeah.
But I can understand, for the NBA stuff, like, oh, I need to know the what if type of situation for late swap. Like, I get that factor, but it's information that will end up reflected in the projections anyway.
Well, but also the projections. So like using the Spencer Dinwiddie example, I'm just weighing what Adam is saying against what the person who did the projections is guessing is going to happen. They're both sharp players. They're both, they're paying attention. So if they have differing opinions, and I can kind of say, well, if I use the projection that we have in there, I'm going to get to no Spencer Dinwiddie, but Adam's making a compelling argument. I want to get to some Spencer Dinwiddie just in case he does get to the high end of that. So, and I think there's those kinds of things. That's just one example that came to mind, but I think those come up, a couple times a week. That there are examples of players that I think, okay, well, the projection says one thing, and the projection isn't wrong. To be clear, they're giving you kind of more conservative projections because they're not going to make outlandish assumptions about, I think the coach is going to play him 10 more minutes than he's been playing. But sometimes the analyst will give that kind of range of outcome, and I find it useful to kind of understand what the range of outcomes is for a player in terms
Okay.
of
Okay, that makes
minutes.
sense. But
Yeah.
if all that media went away, do you think that you'd still be a profitable player?
Yeah, I do think so.
Like MLB, like for instance in MLB, using the top stack type of tool and ownership, and you're stacking teams. Like, is there like
MLB it wouldn't change a thing for me.
right? But that's kind of the point that I'm like I think people over I always this is how I always put it. You're listening the stuff you're listening to or reading is just an explanation of the projections. So it's like
Yeah, generally yes, yeah.
right. So so because I say this because like we both work for content sites and it's like, well, so you're telling me that everything that your colleagues do is worthless? I go, no. For the type of people that look at lineup HQ or Fantasy Crunch or whatever, and they have all these numbers in front of them, they're like, I don't know. I get this icky feeling having to trust numbers. Like, well, here's this article that explains what that why the numbers are the way they, because we get that in our Discord all the time. Like, what? Why does so and so project? Or why does so and so project so poorly in such a great matchup? It's like, well, because he's 8,900. The team total is 102, and they're an 8-point underdog. It's like, yeah, but they're horrible against guards. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't matter that much. Like, yes, it's reflected in the number, but it's not reflected. You think it should mean this much, but it doesn't.
Weather stuff. People talk about, do you factors? There was a big topic of conversation last weekend. How much are you factoring in the weather into NFL score, like into your projections for NFL? And what both Greg and I said was, well, we're factoring it in because Vegas is factoring it in. So all of the projections are factoring in the weather. You don't have to factor it in double on top of what the projections. And of course, the Bills went way over any projection that they had. So I guess the right answer was not to factor in weather. I don't know, but
right. But it's already in there. Like all that stuff is already in there.
Yeah, exactly. All of that information, most information that you can find is factored into projections. There are occasions the projections probably don't factor into whether it's a good strip club city for James Harden.
Right.
so I think that there are. I try to. I mean, you gave me the catchphrase. That's what the numbers say, right? So
that's what the tools say. That's what the tools say.
Is essentially that's what the tools say. Yeah. So most of the content that I do is reading what explaining what the tools say and how I interpret that in building my lineups. I try to occasionally find spots where I'm going against the tools. Like I try to find spots where I think it makes sense to, okay, the tools say this is kind of a conservative estimate. There were a couple times this year where I said that I had interest in players who had projections of 0. One of them being Jordan Howard for the Eagles, and he had a projection of 0, which was probably the right projection because he was coming up from the practice squad. They had 2 running backs ahead of him. And I said, well, I think that there's some chance that he comes in. He's really the only one of the 3 available running backs who is a big bruiser. I think he'll be the goal line back. Wouldn't be that surprising if they just want to use their biggest back. They're going against the Lions. I have some interest here at under 1% ownership. He scored 2 touchdowns that game and still didn't matter because there were better running backs on that slate. But there have been times where I'm like, okay, this is what the projection says. I don't think the projection is wrong. I think that there's a good chance that 0 is his score, that he doesn't have any opportunity. But I also think that there's you could get something big out of him if he does play in this matchup. And then on Showdown, another time, Philip Lindsay was projected for 0 because he hadn't played the week before. And I said, well, he's getting literally no ownership on a Showdown slate. And there's news out here saying that they want to use him. I have some interest here. And then, of course, he had 13 carries or something and did nothing with them. So neither time really benefited anybody who heard what I had to say. But I think that it's interesting to hear those kinds of things where, okay, the projection says one thing, and occasionally I find it useful to get away from the projection.
Or that the projection has a much wider range of outcome
Yeah,
than
exactly.
simply the median. I think that's where a lot of people, average DFS players, get messed up. That they look at the median as the projection, and not that that's just the center number in a range of outcome that could be extreme, depending on the player.
Right.
Extreme, like that Jordan Howard. It's like if we played this laid out 100 times, more than 50 times he literally gets a zero. He literally
Yeah,
plays
doesn't
zero
play. Yeah,
snaps.
right.
Right.
Yeah,
And then 45 other times he gets under 5,
right.
and then 4 times he gets like 10 or 15, and then one time he gets 28.
Right.
And it's like if we made a median projection, it would be 2, right? Of all of
Yeah,
that, and be
right.
like, why are you playing a guy with a 2-point projection? It's like, well, at the very upper end, especially in a showdown slate or type of small slate
Yeah,
type of thing, it's like if you play that guy at 0.65% owned, like you could do anything else in your lineup, and like you're making a case that there are outcomes in his range that make winning lineups,
yeah, exactly.
that have a realistic path. Obviously, there are outcomes where the starting quarterback gets injured on the first play and the backup quarterback comes in and throws
Yep.
for 400 yards.
Yep.
You're probably not doing that, right?
Yeah, that's
Right?
not something I play backup running backs. Sometimes I'm like, is it really that much sharper of me to play backup running backs, which I do all the time in Showdown? Is that any sharper than the backup quarterback? Because I mean, the backup running back is more likely to get there. Like, definitely has more paths, I think, than the backup quarterback. But sometimes I wonder if
Well,
if
the backup running back is typically cheap, while the backup quarterbacks aren't.
that's a good point. Yeah,
Right, a
especially
$6,000 quarterback is much different than a $1,400 running back.
right. It's like Marcus Mariota comes. Marcus Mariota, of course, everybody's favorite example. If he comes in and gets a 1 yard rushing TD, which he does sometimes, it still isn't going to be optimal at his price tag. Whereas
Right.
if Boston Scott does it, or whoever the
Right,
backup
for
running back-
$800 on the bottom of the showdown pool, right?
yeah, yeah,
Then
that's true.
that's much different.
Yeah.
But it seems like your media diet is. I mean, now that you do this full time, are you more likely throughout the course of the, like on a typical day, like are you like I'm gonna watch? Are you watching Josh? Are you watching the process? You're not a morning person, so you're definitely not watching that live.
I'm not watching it live. I don't watch it that often. Maybe I watch it less than I should, because sometimes when I do watch those shows, I'm like, it is really interesting to hear the different processes, the thought process that they put into it. But yeah, typically I don't consume a lot of the daytime info. I don't really start consuming much until hour and a half before lineups lock for NBA. I start.
Yeah, for NBA, okay. Let's take out NBA. Let's put it in more for like an MLB, something where as long as like the starting pitchers are all like in,
Yeah.
like other than maybe like, oh, they're gonna platoon this guy in the lineup, or oh, this guy's maybe coming off the 10-day injured list or something, like most of the time, like to me, MLB DFS is like the least, I would say, the least stressful DFS.
Yeah,
It feels like I could go about my day and play quite like I could, if I wanted to, I could show up 15 minutes before lock and build 150 good lineups. But I also feel like I could listen to content throughout the day and just kind of take it in and just go like, oh yeah, that's maybe people will play the Braves more than I think. Oh, and you could just kind of like peruse stuff that things aren't. It's not going to be one of those things where the Dodgers lineup comes out and it's like it's all backups and Kershaw gets scratched, and that happens like 14 times a night.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so I think this past year, which was my best MLB year ever, I think I could probably consume the least content, just because I just realized I'm very reliant on the tools for MLB. I read what the top stacks tool tells me. What are the, how owned is this stack going to be? What are the odds of it actually getting there? And kind of shape my exposures accordingly. But I do think that there are definitely times that I missed things because I didn't consume content. Things like, oh, this is a game where it's just going to be a bullpen game, or I don't know. I think that there's still some usefulness to the content. This year, for example, I think is it Baltimore that is making it harder to hit home runs. I feel like if I didn't learn that kind of thing, I might go half a season before I adjust my priors. uh, so I don't
But
know.
that would be accounted for in the projections.
It would be accounted for. Sometimes, I let my priors say like, oh, why is this team only projected for 2% owned? Why is the stack only going to be 2% owned in Baltimore? This is a great spot. And,
Right.
I can just be wrong sometimes. I mean, I'm not immune to just being
Well, just
wrong.
like San Francisco, like people didn't realize last year that they changed stuff that it's San Francisco. It's still a pitcher's park, but it's not
Not the
so
worst.
people would just avoid teams in San Francisco and go like, no, this is or a Petco or something
Yep.
like that. And then not realize that like this park isn't as bad. And then like the Marlins changed their dimensions, and that became more hitter friendly. And then people think of like the Royal Stadium as like is Kaufman a pit like, but to me, all of this is already accounted for in the projections. I like
Yeah.
the reason that I'm listening to the content is I want to hear people's biases.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
That's useful.
Even if it's correct or incorrect, it's just that what is how much of the bias is going to be on this slate? And that's essentially what I'm judging. Not whether or not they're correct or incorrect, is that all projected ownership around the industry is done on a much more analytical level and not done on a human level
Right.
that that you have to add the human, you have to add it. And the more and more that you're pumping one guy because he's the best value on the slate, the ownership almost has to go up, right?
Yeah.
And the ownership has to also like start spreading. The more on one guy gets, the less owns like five other players get.
Right.
And then once you start adjusting all of that, then that's easier to see. If I were to not look around the industry and see what's being said or listen or even just leisurely, I'd sit here and go, okay, this guy's 30% here. On this other side, he's listed as 24% owned. This side, he's listed as 36% owned. What's the
Yeah.
middle of those three numbers? And then next thing you know, they're 48% owned. And you're like, how the fuck did that happen? It's like,
Yeah, I mean, it's a useful process to look at all the sites. I think it's probably something that I should do more of because I agree with you. It's occasionally I will be caught off guard and probably shouldn't be because probably if you look at another site, they're touting this player that it was kind of I wasn't expecting to get steamed as much as they are. So yeah, I think what you're doing is useful, and maybe I do some of that to an extent. I consume information, I consume content throughout the week, and maybe it kind of gives me an idea, but I don't internally actually adjust the ownership projections necessarily, except for maybe to some extent I do. If a player is projected for 4% ownership and I've seen people tweeting about him all week, I will internally say, okay, I don't think that 4% is going to be right. So I guess I do it, but maybe less thoughtfully than you do. I adjust what I think the ownership is going to be.
so are we? Are we somewhat in agreement? Because some people, and some people I've heard, think the other way. Like what I'm saying at least is that I think it's worthwhile to look multiple places. Like
Yep.
as long as you're able to remove the bias. Like
Sure.
I have no problem listening to this show here, reading that article there, seeing someone's the core plays list or and I don't and I'm not doing it because I want to see what they think. I really don't care what they think. And a lot of times I'm looking at stuff that whatever analyst is saying, I actually don't even respect their opinion. Like I actively think they're bad, but I know that 1,000 people are looking at it. So like I'm going to look at an so I value that. But there's some people that would say do the opposite. That it would be better find one place that you trust and then have just block out everything else. And
Yeah.
I can't see in a peer-to-peer game where you're playing against other opponents why having information on what your opponents are looking at is not valuable.
Yeah. So I agree with you that it's valuable. I don't think I have the patience to seek out content of people whose opinions I don't respect and to spend an hour listening to that content. So I
You
typically
put it on 1.5 speed. You put it on 2x. You could go right through it.
I put everything on 1.5, 2x speed. So that is true. But typically, if there's not at least one person on a podcast whose opinion I do want to hear, I'm probably not going to listen. But yeah, I do agree with you that anytime I'm consuming content, I'm still using my own brain to process what they're saying. I'm not saying this person thinks this player is a great play, therefore I'm going to give them a huge boost. It's if the analysis that they gives makes me agree with them, makes me think, okay, they are a great play, then I will give them that boost. And sometimes they'll say, I think this player is a great play, and I might end up lowering their projection. And it's not necessarily because of the analyst. There's no analyst that I listen to that I'm like, this guy's so bad that I'm going to fade what they're doing. It's just sometimes I think, okay, I think that this is flawed reasoning that a lot of people are going to follow, and I'm not going to follow this reasoning. Might happen.
Yeah, but for me, the flawed reasoning is just looking at the numbers. So it's like I'll see some list that like here's the top 3 plays of the slate. It's like, okay, first guy, I look at my aggregate projections, and it's like, okay, I get the first, yeah, the best value play on the slate, yeah, no problem, get that. Second guy is like, okay, he's kind of like the top spend up option, I get that. And then the third guy is projected like 7 points lower than anyone else, and I go, what? Why? Like and I go, okay, let me take a look at projections here, projections there, like they're all like bad project, like poor project, like not horrible, but like this guy's gonna be this guy should be 4% owned.
Yeah.
But then I see like, and they're like probably not gonna be 4%, probably gonna be 8%, only because it's on that lit. Like, so it's more likely I have none of them. Because I'm not changing the player's projection, I'm just changing the ownership. And based on all of the actual player projections, this guy should be 4% owned. Now I'm putting him up to 8. Like, I'm never going to get any of them. I'm like it's going to be wildly over twice as owned as they should be.
Yeah.
And it's all based on some, like, I don't even know I don't need to know what the reasoning is because I'm already trusting the numbers as it is. So I'm just listening for people that say stuff that doesn't adjust, that isn't reflected in the numbers in any extent, right? Now, a lot of times when you're listening and reading stuff, it's all around like the chalk cash type of lineup anyway. So you're not really like, obviously in GPPs, you're not just trying to build like, oh, here's the 8 chalkiest players, jam them in, yeehaw. But a lot of times, most days, what are on those lists and articles and podcasts and everything agree with the projections to some extent. I mean, I mean, I'm looking through. It's like, oh yeah, what's the difference between this guy and that guy at the same price? And they're like a 1 point projected difference. Yeah. So it's like, feel free to flip a coin if you want. I mean,
the one exception that I found is golf. When I listen to golf content, and then I look at what I've done. If I just like do a blind run of golf lineups, it'll be like, oh, they really like this guy that I'm getting 0 of based on the Osmo projections. And it's Osmo content, Osmo people doing the show, talking about a player. Oh, they really like this guy and I'm getting none of him. So that's the one exception I would say where people just, the analysis doesn't always match the projections.
I don't trust people though.
You trust the project. But I feel like in golf in particular, it might be harder to project. And
well, no. See, the difference is that in a game like golf, it's very similar to MMA. So, like, I will listen to MMA content. So it's you do golf, I'll do MMA. It's very similar where the median projection doesn't matter.
Doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
Right, doesn't mean anything.
Huge range of outcome. You win or you lose. You knock them out in the first, or yeah.
Right, either you make the cut, you don't make the cut. Like, it's just like you're rarely ever going to get in that middle range. In MMA, it's like the guy could score 136 or 2 points. Like it's a heavyweight fight. It's over in 15 seconds, and one guy has 117, the other guy has 2. And the thing is, it could have been either way. Like, I mean, like it could have been one or the other. I listen for the biases because I'm not going by the median projection. I'm going by the betting lines.
Right.
So, for instance, in golf, I would be going by the win odds or the top 20 odds or something like that instead of the actual like median projection. So when like in MMA, a lot of times the analysis is very similar to the betting lines of like, oh, this guy's a horrible play because he's had 12 straight decisions and the other guy has not been finished in 27 fights. And I'm like, Okay, and then I look at the inside the distance line for the guy, and he's plus 480. And it's like, I didn't have to listen to the 10 minutes of conversation. All I could do is look at, why am I playing a $9,000 fighter with a plus 480 inside the distance where everyone else is in the, plus 150, minus 110. It's like, yeah. And they're explaining the reason why. Because the guy is not a finisher, and the guy that he's fighting has never been fucking knocked out. And it's already reflected in the betting line. So, like, I don't have to.
Yeah. I should probably be using your approach more in golf.
Right. So, like, I wouldn't be confused by that.
40 minutes. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that show with the golfer, it's like maybe their style of play or somehow in the projections make their median lower. But it's like based on the win odds, it's like, well, they have a 0.86% win chance, and they're going to be 2% owned, and it's like, that's worth play. That's the reason you're playing. It's not, you're not playing for, well, this guy makes a lot of birdies on par fours, and the strokes gained approach is, I don't care about any. Same thing for MMA. The only thing in MMA that I have to pay attention to, it's reflected in the projection, is the fighters that can score well in decisions. Because based on my metrics, like the correlation between inside the distance wins and 100-point scores is very high. But there are outliers of wrestlers, especially, that, if they could take you down 8 times in a fight, have 12 minutes of control time, and get 120 ground strikes, it's a 3-round fight and they score 142 points. And their inside the distance is like plus 280. And it's like, I would never get there with just those lines. Their median projection is much higher than some other fighters. Typically, they're like 10 points higher, so I need to weigh that into account. But I wouldn't know, like, the classic one is Marib.
So you do need to have some knowledge of the sport.
Only for those instances.
Yeah, but there are those instances that exist where just going by the lines and adjusting everything doesn't always work. You need to know at least a little bit about the specific fight type, the styles of the fighter. Yeah. Right.
So, like, I would like Marib Dvalishvili. Like, he never finishes fights, but he takes like 16 takedowns in a fight. You'd look and like he's 44% owned at a plus 400 inside the distance, and it's like based on my spreadsheet, he was vastly over-owned, but the dude scores like 120 points every fight because of his fight style. And that wouldn't be accounted for in the betting lines, because the betting lines are only just like, is he going to get a finish or is he not going to get a finish? And then you have ones where the inside the distance is like you have 2 guys in a fight. One is like plus 100 and the other guy is plus 240 in the same fight, and it's like this fight is highly likely not to go to decision, but they're both knockout artists. So it's the type of fight where there's probably not going to be any grappling. There's going to be no take. It's basically guys that throw 2 or 3 punches a minute, and they throw haymakers, and one of them is going to get knocked out at some point in the 3 rounds. But from a DFS scoring perspective, like if they win after the first minute of the first round, they're going to score like 94 points. Right, which is fine, but it's like the likelihood of them scoring 100 plus, like is high because they're going to score 90 to 100 a lot of times, but the likelihood of them scoring 140 points is almost non-existent because they just don't throw enough volume or anything. That's the type of so a lot of times based on my spreadsheet, those knockout artists compared to their ownership come out really high.
Interesting.
And I sit there going, it's like, why is this guy who's like plus 140 like 12% owned? And it's like, yeah, because it's a guy that will throw 18 punches in 3 rounds. And if he doesn't get a knockout in the first round, he's dead. Like, literally, he's DFS irrelevant.
Very binary, yeah.
Right, very binary. Either he gets a first-round knockout, or you might as well have never played him. Because he's going to score like 60 points at best.
Which you love in GPPs. I mean,
right, which you love. We love the right, exactly. Yeah. So I don't mind having some of them, but I need to know going in, so I know what those ranges of outcomes are. Because that median projection and that betting line is not going to tell the full story. Can I do my lineups without listening to anything and not knowing any of that information? Yes, but it gives me that's the extra 5%.
Yep.
I think the overall point that I was trying to make with the your media diet is that media diet that you have is that last 5%.
Yep.
It shouldn't be. That isn't
Right.
the first 95%. The first 95% is what did the tools say.
Yep. Exactly.
The last
I,
5%
I'm
is
with you.
like the little tweaks.
Yep. But I think that 5% is still kind of important. I think that I would be a winning player without that 5% probably. But I
But do you
also
think
think
people could just be winning plays just on the 5%?
that, oh no, no.
That's the point. That's where I think people go wrong. Like, oh, I'm just
Right.
going to listen to shows and see what they say. It's like, well, why don't you just use the tools first? And like that's where you're going to win more than just finding out who's on someone's core plays list.
Yep. I agree with you.
So this is what you should be doing, Neil. What you've learned that you need to engage more on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't do that much Twitter engagement anyway to begin with. So yeah.
What you have to every Awesome show that comes out on the Awesome.com account, you have to quote tweet with probably nothing.
I like that.
Right? Probably like it's like an NBA DFS strategy show, or like when Josh does the the percentage for DK and FanDuel, more of less of. He's a quote tweet probably nothing. Right? Jokic probably nothing. Or the eyeballs emoji or something. The rocket ship you got to do the rocket ship emoji.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Right? Rocket ship emoji, eyeball emoji, probably nothing.
Yep.
.eth.
Probably throw out an occasional NGMI.
Right? Not going to miss it. Right? Is
Not going to make it.
not going to make it? Is that
I'm going to do it mostly on your anti-NFT tweets, I think.
okay? Is that what NGMI stands for?
What do you-
Not going to make it?
Yeah, not going to make it.
Oh, is that supposed to be sarcastic?
So it's initially here's my understanding. It initially was used by NFT people to put down non-NFT or anti-NFT.
Right, that's what I thought. Not going to make it
on crypto or NFTs.
Right.
Because you're you're not going to make it because you're not on this rocket ship with us on the NFT crypto.
Have
rocket
fun
ship.
staying poor. That's another one, right?
Yeah. I think that it has become more sarcastic. Now people use it a little bit more sarcastically. And then also WAGMI, we are going to make it, is something that I think initially was just NFT and crypto bros ready on the flight together, on the rocket ship together. And maybe I don't know if that one's used as much sarcastically.
Right. Well, I don't see that much of it since I mute all the accounts that talk about NFTs
Right, yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
Right. I see some of it because there are people that have a nice balance.
Yeah.
But
I try to keep it nice and balanced. I don't do a lot of NFT tweeting.
Right.
Just
No,
for
but dude, there are some people.
I mean, I know.
The more
I
that
follow
you,
a lot of NFT people too. I don't hate it as much as you do because I'm also kind of into it. I believe in it a little bit more than you do.
the more that you tweet, the less I believe in it. Right.
I know. So here, let me just real quick. Let me touch on this. Is there a point where you would buy an NFT? Like if a Bored Ape gets down to 1 ETH, would you consider buying it at that point? Or you just don't want it. You don't believe in it. You think it's a Ponzi, and you're just not gonna.
Yes.
Okay.
I own no crypto and no NFTs.
All right.
I is absolutely actually if it got down to 1 ETH, I'd be less inclined to buy it.
Yeah, because then it's more likely to go to zero.
More right, it's more likely right. People don't understand those types of things. Right. Oh, Bitcoin's down 30% the past month or whatever. Good time to buy. It's like no, it's actually like it in most assets in the history of time, the more that it goes down, the more likely it is to go down further. But that's the main reason not to get into a finance debate or something, that timing the market is like, why bother? Right. Just like, and that's why I always make fun of the crypto people of like, it's time to buy the dip. I'm like, aren't you the same person that puts 100% of their life worth? And how do you have money to buy the dip?
Nobody has any money to buy the dip. Come on.
Right. So what does that mean?
I just have to say one thing, Blender. NGMI.
I'm not going to miss it.
That's also true.
Right? The people at the top of the pyramid are going to make a whole bunch of money. 99% of people are going to 4 years, 5 years from now, I'll be like, could you believe we were under all that delusion? And now I have to go get a real job or something like that. And and then the people that at the top of the pyramid will just go on to their next pyramid. That's
It's
what it
possible.
is.
I would not rule out that you are correct on this. You were doubtful of NBA Top Shot from the start when it was, and at the time it was also just completely like there was no way it was going to sustain the way it was
No,
going.
it was
At the
easy
time.
to see. It was come on.
That was I mean that was easy for me to see, except I believed in the product, and I still do. I will confess I believe in the product. But my thinking at the time was, well, people are buying Mason Plumlee for $100. There's no way a Mason Plumlee GIF out of 1,500 is worth $100. That's crazy. But to me, I was like, I'll still buy the the LeBrons and the superstars debuts, that kind of stuff. So I thought if you target certain things, I think that they have value, and I still believe that. But I also I'm not going to claim to have any acumen in this space, so we don't need to debate it. I don't think that you're necessarily wrong. I have a different read on it than you do.
Well, there's short. I always admitted the short term flipping.
Oh yeah,
If you can find volatility in any market, there's money to be made short term.
Sure.
But then don't make any claims long term. Like that to me, that was my stance. It has nothing when debating with like Davis and stuff like that. It's like, oh, so you're telling me that if you go in and buy a pack for $60 and you flip it and turn it to 180, that you wouldn't want to do that? I go, it's absolutely fine, but then don't convince me it's a long term proposition. Like, you could do that in any volatile market. I could do that in fucking bananas. I mean, that's what commodities trading is, right? It's not long. These aren't long-term. You don't hold commodities for 30 years. It's short-term. It's like just like Forex, right? Currency trading. It's the same type of thing. As long as there's volatility, there's money to be made, arbitraging, stuff like that. But like, if you're investing, like, dude, is this something that I'm going to buy and hold on to for 20 years?
Right.
Don't tell me that it is, and then see your trading activity as if you're flipping fucking bullshit.
Oh yeah.
Right?
No, I would never do that. I would never claim that I think this is a great long-term buy and then be constantly flipping. Yeah.
Right. Well,
I think there's a lot of that in the crypto NFT space. There's a lot of people just always pumping their own bags.
Right. Sure. And there wouldn't.
I get why.
If you believed in it so much, there wouldn't be a need to. You don't see me tweeting out SPY, the rocket ship, VTI rocket. Like what? I don't need to pump my S&P 500 index funds, right? Like, dude. Like I've no. Like, dude. If that goes to zero, money doesn't matter anymore, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. If NFTs and crypto go to zero, the world still goes on.
Yeah.
Right.
That is true.
So I don't mind throwing in my attitude. I'm 42 years old. The money I'm putting in now is I'm taking out when I'm 62 years old.
Right.
So like I don't need. Oh well, this went up 5x in 3 days. It's like, yeah, and the fourth day it went down 10x. Like what am I doing? Like either you're playing a slot machine, then just say it's a slot machine. You're like, okay, fine, it is what it is. But I fucking seeing people tweet about this is the metaverse. No, Neil, it's more the reason why I'm jaded. We're close to the same age, right?
Yeah, I'm 38.
Okay, so we're close enough. Number one, I was into technology early. So like I was on the internet before people knew there was an internet, right? So like when people say to me about Bitcoin and crypto and DeFi, and they you're a boomer, you don't understand. Number one, I'm not a boomer, and you don't understand. It's like, no, I understand. Like I've lived through this already, right? Yeah. Like I'm 24-year-old people are telling me like oh, you don't get the tech. It's like, dude, this is 1998. I was on Wall Street during this time where the cashier at the grocery on where I worked near Wall Street, he had stock picks, right, of whatever .com companies.
Do you think you're biased? So you say you've lived through this, but you've lived through one example that you're giving me of something that is similar to
real estate bubble 2005. There's another one.
Okay, all right, but still, you might be biased by your experiences that are most similar to this. Might not be the exact same. Again,
yeah, but hold on. And my response to that is in the history of finance, of anything, of assets or anything like that, the number one thing of any disruptive anything is this time it's different. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I
Right?
hear
Because
you.
that's what you're telling me. You're saying, oh no, the commodities and assets that went woo and bubble. You know the bubbles before. This time it's different. Well, every bubble that has ever existed, the people said you got to get into this, and we go, well, what about the last bubble? It's like, well, this time it's different. Like you're making the. If you say that, you're now convincing me not to do like everything that happens in that space makes it more and more likely that I'm correct.
Sure.
When I hear nothing, when I hear that where crypto is viewed at the same way that my S&P, my Vanguard index funds are, then I'll believe it. That then
Yeah.
when there's no one who tweets about that stuff,
Yeah.
right? No one.
I agree with you that the hysteria around it makes me believe in it a little bit less. I think that you are right there. Um, I'm and I also I don't claim to have a deep understanding of any of it. So I think I've heard a lot of about use cases of NFTs. I don't really get into it. I just kind of follow like, okay, I think this person's pretty sharp and they're getting into this. Maybe I'll be able to make a little bit of money off of it, or this looks interesting. The things that I've heard kind of interest me, but I also am not somebody who's a deep down like a true NFT geek where I'm like really following the roadmap and this is where it's trying to figure out whether something really has legs. I just kind of tail other people in this space a little bit.
I can understand if you put a certain percentage of your net worth into a
Sure.
risky
Yeah.
asset. Like
Yeah.
I also want to come from the other side. Like if you're like, I'm going to put 5%, and
Yeah.
this could 50x or something. God bless you.
Exactly.
I have no issue with like if I were to do anything like that, it would be that. It would
Okay.
be like,
Yeah.
why don't I take the money that I have in my stock portfolio and take 5% down and buy Bitcoin.
Right.
I could see doing. I could reasonably see this. Anytime that someone's like, "Oh, I have 80% of my net worth," and then
Yeah.
no,
Yeah. Well, that's a different story. Yeah.
right. That now you completely lost me, right? Because that's what we. I mean, in DFS, in the lives that we live, we take risk way more than the average American
Sure.
population.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not like people look at me like I'm a fucking nit, and it's like, no, compared to most of the world, I'm
Right.
a risk.
You're taking
I'm
big
really
risks.
risky, right?
Yeah, that's true.
People look at what I do for a living and go, "Wow, you really took some risks there," right?
Well, then people say it goes back to that tweet, which I think was a real tweet initially. I'm tweeting this from my 800 square foot apartment. Just got an offer of $500,000 for my Bored Ape. Turned it down without question, or something like that.
Right.
That's when I'm like, don't do that.
Don't do that, right? Don't
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not anti. I just this all looks like greater fool theory. Like until it, I mean, not until it if and it up and here's the last note is very to wrap it up with DFS. If I'm wrong, okay, and Bitcoin blows up and crypto and DeFi 20 years from now, the same time horizon that I'm talking about. So when I'm 62 years old, and it'll be the type of thing where when when you were 42, saying that you fucking don't believe in any of this shit, you would have 100 extra money, right? You would have taken that $200,000 and it would have been 20 million. Now, 20 years later, I'll still look at my $2 and $3 million and go, I'm still fine.
Yeah.
Right, like
I'll
like
agree with
that,
this
like you don't have to evangelize. Like I'm perfectly fine if I'm wrong, only being well off when I'm 62 and not being
Right.
like wealthy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if you happen to be the guy that bought Doge at whatever and flipped the looks and whatever the hell's going on, like, oh yeah, I put $500 in and now I'm worth $500 million.
Right.
Like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't do that. Like, I'm still fine with my life. Like but it's very similar to DFS that so many people, at least from what I see, are like, well, if you're not trying to turn 10x your bankroll every year, then why are you playing DFS? Is like that's never going to be the attitude that I ever have for anything. So
Yeah.
like, But I mean, but for average DFS players like that see guys like you max entering stuff, or even guys like they look at my volume and think it's, I play high volume in
Right, right.
comparison, and they go, no, I just like playing $100 and $200 and a slate, and I've been playing for 6 years, and I make like $10,000, $12,000 a year on average, and it pays for me and my wife's vacation and my kids, something like
You're on top of your regular job. You're making 10, 12,000
right,
bucks having fun. There's nothing wrong with that, for sure.
right. But where you shouldn't be looking at Osimo, at Alex going,
Which is the trap I fall into, is looking at
right,
other people being like, "Ooh, I want to get to that level. That'd be nice."
right.
If I just keep up what I've been doing, I'd be pretty happy. Yeah.
Right. So, dude, so you say you fall into that trap?
Oh yeah, for sure. I fall into that trap. Hearing people talk about, I'm trying to think. Chess is okay, saying like, "Oh, this player, he fell off." Well, if he had just kept playing like the regular tournaments, he'd make at least like $300,000 a year. Like, making it sound like $300,000 is nothing. I'm like, man, if he thinks that it's that much, that easy to make a lot more than 300,000, like that's a small number. Yeah, right. I fell into that a little bit and started playing higher volume, thinking, well, I'm a good player, I should be able to make.
Yeah, but who knows that, dude? Who knows if that's true? I mean, come on.
I know.
Right.
That. Yeah, that's
Yeah, but I think from a public perspective, I hope at least that I'm very clear about that's what I teach, yeah. And that's always going to be the perspective that I come from. Of like, I'm not going to teach you how to win the Millie Maker. I'm not like how to play well, get a percentage, and you could build yourself up over time. And it's not get rich quick anything. It's like, oh, well, what happens if I only have $1,000 bankroll? It's like, there's nothing wrong with the $1,000 bankroll. You could be at the point that I am 5 years from now.
Right.
Right? Like, you could do it the same. Like, getting to that point, the only difference between me and you, Neil, is the time horizon, really.
Yeah.
Like, from a bankroll perspective, I think you will make more money than me. I mean, obviously, you won the Millie Maker, so you'll definitely make more money than me. Yeah. But even if you took that out, is that the only difference between me is the time? But like, I think 20 years from now, if we kept on playing DFS, like, it just would take me longer to get there and have less risk involved. So like that.
So let's say you won the Millie Maker. Would you then max enter anything, or are you still just trying to shoot? So like, yeah.
You know what I'd do with my Millie? I'd take out what 800,000, but 900,000, and put it into fucking S&P 500. I mean, like, that's what I mean. Who would, if I get an average return of 5 to 7% on $1 million? That's 50 to 70. Like, that's literally the goal. That's like if I had $1 million and got a 5 to 7.5% return, that's literally the goal that I say on this podcast.
Remember all the taxes you're gonna have to pay too. So you got to.
Yeah, but I have to pay taxes on DFS winnings anyway. So I mean, like.
Yeah. But like the Millie, like you can't. It's not like you can't put 900,000 into the.
Right. Of course, right, because you're gonna have to pay, right? Obviously. But I'd say, but that would be my perspective. It wouldn't be like, oh, now it's the time to max enter. It's like, no, now it's the time. Yeah. Yes, my bankroll has gotten bigger. I will still, I will up my volume, but at like.
Yeah.
Am I max entering every? No. Am I playing the Thunderdome? No. Am I? What is my goal? My goal is to make $50,000 to $75,000 a year.
Right.
Doesn't matter if I have.
It's reasonable. Yeah.
Right. The more money that I have, the less likely I even play DFS. Right. Okay. It actually goes the other way. If like you told me, if it's $20 million dropped in my lap right now.
Yeah, like that's probably true for me too. I would probably just at that point, what am I playing DFS for? What's the grind all about? Maybe, I don't know.
I'd play recreational. I'd play recreationally.
Yeah, I might, and it's such a big part of my life right now that I don't actually know that I would drop out of it. But I said that after I won the Millie Maker. I said that on my show. I did a little interview with Alex, and I said, yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll stop playing DFS for all I know. Like I didn't know how I would react, and then of course I have doubled down and gotten more into it. So I don't really know how I would react if I had.
Right, but the point that I was making with the 20 million is that. Why would my goal be to make $50,000 to $75,000 a year playing DFS?
Yeah, you don't need that. Yeah.
I don't need that. Right. I already have
put that money somewhere where you're making more. So yeah.
Right. So I would only be playing DFS just because I enjoy playing DFS. And just it is what it is, and whatever it is. But mean, at the current state, I'm playing to make money,
Yeah.
right? So I need to make money, but I don't need to make $1 million.
Right. Yep.
Not going to miss it. Probably nothing. Okay. Player Q DFS on Twitter. N Corfield. I always say N Corfield. NC Orfield. 8K on DraftKings. And you'll still be doing the next weekend must have.
Yep.
You'd be doing the must haves.
So I'm going to be at the Tournament of Champions next weekend. So that'll be fun playing in a tournament of 100 people, where the top prize is $1 million.
What's the slate for that? Is that just
It's a two game slate. Yeah. Conference championship games. Yep. So that'll be fun. We'll see if I can keep it up while doing that, because I'll be in a room with all the other players who are in Arizona. So I might be a little bit distracted, but I'll try to keep it going.
You don't have to.
I mean, yeah.
I'm gonna mute you. I'll just mute you.
What's that?
I'll just mute you.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so good luck. I could wish you good luck at that because I'm not in it. So
thank you.
So win the $1 million so you could quit DFS, right? So we could have this conversation next week or 2 weeks from now, right? We're on an every other week for people that don't know, right? Because I've gotten some messages. Oh, where was the podcast last week? It's every other week until we get back to football season again. So let's see if you could be can you be a 2-time? Does that count? If you win the million 100-man contest, are you a 2-time million? You're technically a 2-time milli winner.
Yeah, I'll say that I am, just for I'll put it in my Twitter probably, but I won't really believe it.
Right, because typically when someone says milli maker, I consider like the low stakes, like a $20 mill.
200,000 people in the tournament.
Right. I'm not considering a 100-man live final type of stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say. That is my excuse on why I'm not a.
I'm a Millie Maker winner and a Tournament of Champions winner is what I would probably say. Because that's even cooler than a Millie Maker. Right. In my opinion, winning the Tournament of Champions is the dream.
Because that means you're the champion of all the champions.
Exactly. Although it's 1.5 million less than the football champion. So, is it really?
Is it really? It isn't.
Yeah, it's not.
It's all a sham.
Yeah.
It's a Ponzi.
It's a Ponzi.
Probably nothing. You know what's not probably nothing? The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass that you can find at theoryofdfs.com.